Well, good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me today. I just want to go back to the 60s. Do some of you remember the 60s? That great time of year. Some of you are like, yeah, let's talk about the 60s. But I don't want to talk about 1960. I want to talk about AD 60. You know, that time frame that we know so much about. And we're looking at the late 60s AD. And it's very important for us to understand what was going on during this time, because that's when the time is that Mark wrote this gospel. So we need to know what was going on and who his audience is and why we should be concerned with what today's reading was all about. So when we look at the 60s AD, we know that Jesus has walked this earth. He died, he was resurrected, he showed himself to a multitude, and then ascended into heaven. And his disciples were left on this earth to go and spread the good news and share the gospel about who this Messiah really is. Also during this time, we know that Jerusalem was in revolt against the Roman Empire. They were looking to have a savior, a new king who would give them freedom. So we've got the disciples traveling, trying to convince people of who this Jesus really is and who this Messiah really is. And during this time, the people were thinking that their Messiah was going to be an earthly king who was going to come, overthrow a government, and set up a new kingdom for their freedom. But what they didn't realize is that this Messiah who came to them was something far greater than something that's temporary. It was a Messiah for eternity, a Messiah that was not just going to set up a heavenly kingdom on earth, but an eternal kingdom for all who truly believed in him. So when we look at Jesus and Mark trying to change these perceptions, you had people who were on the fence, people who were convinced that Jesus was the Messiah, and those who were doubters. So Mark's whole intention of this gospel, the first 8 chapters of Mark, is to convince people of who Jesus is, who this Messiah is that they have longed for and God has promised them that he is here, and what does that look like. And I think you can all agree that changing people's minds about something is always challenging, right? They have their own ideas. So we've got this mission of Mark to convince the unbelievers of who the Messiah is. And so we see in today's gospel, we have 2 people in 2 different stages of life who need 2 different things from Jesus. And they have in their mind the 2 ways that this Jesus is going to heal them. We have Jairus, who is a man in the church. Jairus, who has learned that his daughter's death is imminent. Jairus, who's concerned and knows that no one can help his daughter from death except for Jesus. And then we have an unnamed woman who has been suffering from this affliction that basically has left her broke, an outcast, separated from her family and friends, and has to be so far removed from society that even if she comes in contact with someone, they will be made unclean and become an outcast. So she's lived with this affliction for 12 years and knows she can't live like this any longer. And the only person that can heal this for her, her only hope is in Jesus. And the good news for Jairus and for this lady is that Jesus happens to be right in her back door, right there on the shore, has just come off the boat. The crowds have gathered, and these 2 people are going to make their way to him. So we've got Jairus, and Jairus is equal to what Father Rick and Father Michael are. So they're clergy. They're the leaders of the church. They would have status and power and would have no problem whatsoever working their way through the crowd to get to Jesus. And then we have this woman who's unclean, who can't be close to society, let alone work her way through a crowd to get to Jesus. So what do? Well, Jairus busts right up, goes right through the crowd, goes right up to Jesus, falls at his feet and says, "This is what's going on with my daughter. She is about to die, and I need you to lay hands on her so that she can be healed." And Jesus agrees and starts to follow Jairus. And this is so different than what was happening during that time, because we know as parents that we would do anything for our children. We would go to any length whatsoever to heal them and help them. But in this time, children weren't viewed as the status that they are today. Children were less than anything. So the fact that Jesus stopped what he was doing, agreed, and followed Jairus to his house to go heal this child was extraordinary. So as they're walking, all of a sudden we see the uncleaned woman, the outcast, who crawls up, sneaks up behind Jesus, and comes and touches his cloak because she knows, if only I can touch his robe, I will be healed. So we've got someone who's bold in their petition and tells Jesus what they need from him. And then we have a lady who knows, I just need to be in his presence. I just need to touch him. But I am going to crawl and sneak up behind him to get what I need to do. And the beautiful thing is, these people had no idea the healing that this Jesus could do for them. So we know that these people have goals, that Jesus is willing to come to them and go. But my question to you is, if this were you, which would you be? Would you be Jairus, who walks up boldly to God and says, this is what I need? Or would you come in under the radar, coming up to him, and if I just touch you, if I just have a little bit of you, I will be healed? So now we have the lady. She's touched Jesus' robe, and Jesus knows that something's happened to his energy and his power. And he knows who touched him, but he's going to challenge this woman, and he says, who touched me? Now look, this woman has everything to lose. This woman has been an outcast. The fact that she crawled through a crowd, the fact that she came up to this supposed king, a royal member of society, the fact that she was a woman and made her way up to this king meant everything. She could lose even more than what she had. But God wanted to test her faith, and she stood up and said, it was me. I did this. And what did he do to her? He didn't chastise her. He looked at her and said, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Now, what I find so interesting is daughter. This is the only time in the Bible where Jesus ever calls someone a daughter. The only time. He doesn't call her beloved, my friend, believer, follower, child. He calls her something much more intimate, something that means acceptance, belonging, and love and affection. He calls her daughter, a name that's by birth, not by marriage. So I can imagine everybody stopping in their tracks again. He's calling her a daughter. She's unclean. This is amazing. And then he goes on and says, go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Not your condition, not your affliction, not your pain, but from your suffering, because Jesus knew what she had endured. Jesus knew it wasn't just that she was hemorrhaging for 12 years and all the physical problems that went with that. He knew the outcast life that she lived, the pain, the suffering, but be freed from that. So he healed her not only physically, but he freed her emotionally, but even more so spiritually. He gave her her life back. I also think it's interesting that he didn't say, go back and seek retribution. Go be angry. Go out and shout, I'm free, I'm good. He didn't say that. He said, just be free from your suffering, which I think is so cool. Now back to Jairus, because he's still standing there, right? He's like, hello, I came to see you because my daughter is about to die. And as this is going on with this woman, he gets word that his daughter is dead. And his friends are like, you know what? Don't bother him anymore. What's Jesus going to do? Your daughter is dead. But Jesus hears this and immediately says, don't be afraid, just believe. Can you imagine? You've been waiting for this one man, the healer, the Messiah, the King of Kings, to come and heal your daughter. And he looks at you and says, don't worry, don't be afraid. Just believe, just believe. Well, you need a lot of faith to do that. And to mention that this lady had taken up some time away from his healing of his daughter. So Jesus gets up to Jairus' house, and he takes 3 disciples with him, and his wife and Jairus are there, and they walk into the house, and everyone's wailing because, of course, a child has just died, and he's like, what's going on? This girl is just asleep. And they laugh at him, and he puts them outside. And it's just the disciples and Jairus and Jesus and the wife and the daughter. And he walks up to the daughter and touches her and says, "Get up." And she does. And then what does Jesus tell Jairus and his wife at this point? He says, "Don't tell anyone, and give her something to eat." And that's how this passage ends, right? Don't tell anyone. Your daughter, who we thought was dead, your daughter who you knew was imminent, about to die, your daughter has just been raised from the dead, and you can't tell a soul. You can't put a post out. You can't tweet it. You can't tell your best friend, "Hey, don't tell anybody, bud." No, wait 3 days. Nothing. And then give her something to eat. So why do you think that Jesus told him not to tell anyone? I mean, after all, he just healed this woman in crowded not sidewalks, they didn't have sidewalks back then, but on the crowded shore. Everybody saw the miracle that he performed. But for Jairus' daughter healing from the dead, they were to tell nobody about it. And I think this is where our minds don't understand God's ways. And don't we always love that answer? We don't understand. But at the end of the day, we have to believe that God knows exactly where and when and how and who to reveal these miracles to. Because miracles aren't just the physical action of the healing of the physical. It's the eternal action of healing the spiritual. It goes much deeper than that. And we have to believe that God knows how to do that and how to show us that way. So then he says, "Okay, give her something to eat," which I think is just so bizarre, right? He's just woken her from the dead. She's not asleep anymore. But who needs to eat? People who are alive, right? Things that are alive. You need to eat. And I think this is Jesus' way of saying, she's healed. She's fine. She needs to go live her life. She is free to go on and live like a normal person. Go and do that. So your daughter is healed, period, dot. Now, if you've ever had a child who was sick or had an illness, you're always longing for that confirmation from the doctor that they're fine, they're healed. And you always think, but what if? How do I know? What if it comes back? You always live in that fear. But Jesus is trying to say, everything is okay. She's going to be fine. So another question that arises is, was it the physical act of Jesus touching this daughter and touching this woman that actually healed them? Because we can't be touched by Jesus physically here on this earth right now. Or was it their faith that healed them? And we know that it is the faith that heals us, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. Because Jesus, when he came here as a man, had the full authority of God to heal through touch, through word, and through actions. And by ultimately his death on the cross, he healed everybody. So you may be thinking, well, that's great for them. I can't do that, right? I'm sick. I'm hurting. I'm ill. Or maybe even I'm dying. How can this help me? How can I be healed? Well, we know that Jesus did not heal everybody. He even passed by those who needed him on this earth. And in my mind, I always think, well, if he had just healed everybody, think about the belief that would have been there. Everybody has no affliction anymore. That would be amazing. I believe, I believe, I believe. But at the end of the day, we know that it's Jesus' ways. And ultimately, what Jesus came to bring us was the healing that's spiritual, that's eternal, that's not just in the physical realm of this earth, that's not just temporary, but that goes on forever and ever. So it's a healing like no other that this Jesus performs, that this Messiah, the King of Kings, brings us today. And we know that no doctor, no pill, no bottle, no surgery, nothing we can buy, nothing we can do can ever heal us from our spiritual ailments. So you may be spiritually dead. You may feel spiritually asleep. You may feel spiritually bankrupt. But at the end of the day, all you have to do is rely on Jesus for that faith to fill you up and give you that strength that you need to continue going on with whatever comes our way. I'm doing a book study right now with, and we're reading Priscilla Schreier, and she wrote something that I think was so interesting. It said, sometimes it takes a crisis to take the focus off of us and put it on God. Meaning sometimes there's nothing else we can do. and it comes down to me and him. We must become bold enough to ask God for what we want and faithful enough to accept what he gives us and what he thinks that we need. So my question to you is this: how is your spiritual health today? Do you find yourself wanting to get up to Jesus to get some healing from him? Are you finding it challenging to handle the physical ailments that you're dealing with today or whatever is coming your way? Do you crave a faith like that woman and Jairus, who are willing to do anything to get to the ultimate healer, to heal you from the inside out? So if you crave contentment, acceptance, peace, to become a daughter or a son of this royal family, all you have to do is be bold enough to say, today is the day. I put my faith in the true Messiah, the one who brings life, the one who brings healing, the one who is the ultimate healer. In Psalm 130, we read, I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word, I hope. May you get a big dose of spiritual healing today so that you can find new life even in the midst of the challenges that you're facing. May your faith be increased more than you ever knew to ask for and more than you ever believed could happen so that you can truly live. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Don't be afraid. Just believe. Amen.